Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we are gonna do a very chatty get ready with me. I'm going out to dinner with one of my girlfriends and I want to share with you the story of me. This is a reintroduction to who I am, what brought me to creating beauty YouTube content, and just all the fun ins and outs, the very intimate, very personal video. So without further hesitation, let's get cozy and get ready together. Let's get right into makeup, and I've already done my sunscreen. It's been on for about 15, maybe closer to 20 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just blot. Since we are moving into summer proper, I really like to take more steps to make sure my makeup is more sweat resistant, heat resistant, water resistant in case it's like an afternoon shower. So after I let my skincare dry down, I always like to give it a blot. If I want to go that extra step, instead of a tissue, I will use a proper blotting sheet. Now I will go in and use my primer, and it's not too hot today, so I'm not really concerned with getting sweaty. So I'm going to use the One Size Secure the Blur, and this is one of my favorite products for smoothing the look of texture, giving a little bit of grip to your makeup, and it just makes everything feel a little bit more polished. And I'm not going to add too much glow because I used the Heimish Artless Glow Base Sunscreen, similar to something like MAC Strobe Cream, but it has an SPF in it. So I use that over top of my base layer sunscreen. Since we are getting ready to head into June, which is Pride Month, I want to share with you a little bit about my backstory. And I feel like my backstory here on YouTube has been pretty transparent. Like, if you look at some of my older videos, I was using a different name, I did my makeup slightly different, I look slightly different, and it's something that I feel like it's been very transparent online, but I've never sat down and properly addressed it. So that's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to just lay everything out on the table and reintroduce myself and share a little bit about my journey here on YouTube and what my goals and aims are here on social media. I'm using a little bit of my Urban Decay primer potion. This is the anti-aging primer. And my eyelids, since I do have a heavier brow ridge and my eyelid skin folds over on itself, it is a little bit more prone to getting oily, getting greasy. I like to be mindful in these summer months and even work a little bit through my eyebrows just to make sure everything's sitting down and it's gonna cling on and hang on to the best of its ability. My name is Z. It's short for Zaylee, which is the name I chose for myself in collaboration with my mom when I was starting off with my gender transition or gender affirming journey, because I loved the name my mother gave me, which was Zachary, and I went by Zach for years. It didn't align with who I am in this chapter of my life and how I want to present myself to the world. So we collaborated, came up with a name. It really resonated with me, and this way I was able to keep all of my Z or Z monograms the same because I really love my Z monogram. This journey for me within my self-identity and everything, it started way back in 2013, and 2013 was a crazy period for me. I was 23 and I felt so stuck. I wasn't happy with myself. I was in a relationship that I really shouldn't have been in, and I should have seen that. You live and you learn, life happens, life moves forward. And I had always had these feelings like I was in the wrong body. I remember as a kid, I spent a lot of time in principal offices for doing girly things. And I'm just like, why? Why do I always get in trouble for doing the things I want to do? A little bit of context. I went to a private Christian school for the first half of my educational career, and then I left right before going into middle school, which is I moved just over the halfway mark through grade 4, and then I did grade 5, which is the last year in elementary school for us, or at least it was back then. And then I went to public middle school and high school. Back then, it was a lot of getting in trouble for things I didn't understand. As a little kid, that created a lot of like internal turmoil and conflicts because I was always told the things I loved and enjoyed were wrong. It's not what God intended for me. And that was really challenging for me as a kid because private Christian school, and then every Wednesday night I went to like Awana's, which then turned into youth group in high school, and then my grandparents and I went to church on the weekend, and it was just always a lot of conflict. Why I was drawn to the things I was drawn to, why I had all the interest, and why was it that this creator who put me here, why would they allow me to be filled with all of these desires for such an early age that were of the devil? And it never made sense to me. And just from like a very early age, like even before my little brother was born, and he's 3 years younger than I am, just getting told that what I'm doing is wrong, it's gonna send me to hell. And it was such a conflicting time because I don't even really understand the concept of why I like the things, what I was experiencing. I just know I liked what I liked, and what I liked made me happy. And getting to play with other kids who enjoyed the same things made me so happy. But here I was as an early age, not even understanding what was going on, getting told that the things that I enjoy, the things that make me happy, were wrong, and they were going to condemn me to hell, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life. So that set the bar off from a very early age of a lot of internal conflict and turmoil. And then it gave me a lot of resentment unfortunately gave me resentment as a younger teenager into my young adulthood for my family. And that was hard because you don't want to have, at least I didn't want to have any type of hard feelings towards my family. I'm now using the ColourPop Blush Crush, and I'm going to use the shade Lovesick. So that was a lot to navigate. There was, in retrospect, my family was only trying to do what they thought were best. And that's something that, you know, took a lot of time to understand in my personal situation with my family and with people I interact with. This is all of our first time on this earth, and we are exposed to so many different opinions and views of what's right, what's wrong, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And a lot of time, if things don't line up within that binary, it's wrong, it's demonized. Sometimes in like cases like I felt like my own, where it's just someone who is trying to do things that spark joy, trying to have that same joy and happiness that everyone else seems to have, is being penalized, and it doesn't make sense. So lots of time in like therapy, and then having to speak to, like, when I came out in grade 11 as gay and said I liked boys, that was a whole new set of things. And now I had to see like different therapists. I had to like try to become ungay and not like boys, and then work through why I liked the different things I liked, why I liked things that were so feminine. And it was just a lot of unnecessary strain on my own mental well-being, my family's mental well-being, as well as our relationship. And it took a lot of time for us to work through that and grow together. And thankfully now I feel like we are in a much better place. We get along, and life has gone a full circle way. I mean, I felt like our relationship got better when I moved to Canada, which is crazy. You move to another country half a day away, and that's what it takes for you to grow that relationship. Sometimes it's that absence and growing into yourself that makes people stronger. By the way, I will mention the products I'm using as I go, but everything will be listed in the description down below. I'm gonna use this matte peach to start sculpting my eyes. And going back to 2013, I was 23 and I was dating a person who was way too old for me to be with. Like, I had no business dating someone double my age, but hey, I thought that was right. And we were together for just over 7 years. That was like my first and really only big relationship I ever had. And when I shared with him my feelings, what I felt inside, what felt true to me, there was this big long speech about how I love you, but I can't love you that way. So then I thought being with this person I thought was my everything was more important. And then I decided to shelf what I was feeling, go back to what was the normal binary for me, and try to assimilate. And that filled me with so much internal rage and conflict because I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I didn't want to do any of these things. I wanted to be with a particular person. I was tired of my family always getting on my case, trying to push me what they felt like was right. And it was a lot. It was a lot, and I didn't have the mental capacity or the emotional bandwidth to process what was going on. So at that point, I relied a lot on partying, which in my case, partying was just going out way too much. I drank too much when I went out. I was never someone who drank at home. I never drank by myself, and I smoked cigarettes. And luckily, like, drinking and cigarettes was as far as like my party days really ever went. I was always skeptical and nervous to dabble into anything more. So that was that. That also led me down a road of trying to figure out how to do things that felt right. So after college, I was trying to figure out what to do because my first college program I did, my major was exercise science and personal training. I came away with a certificate. I worked at a few different local YMCAs. I taught yoga, Pilates, and personal training. And it was okay, but I never felt fulfilled. I was skinny and that was great. But then in retrospect, a lot of my health practices were very disordered because why eat when you can just have a cigarette and a Red Bull, and a sugar-free Red Bull at that, and then end it off in a tanning bed session, 2 tanning bed sessions if it was Saturday and you're going out. Crazy the logic I had from like the first half of my 20s. Insanity. But we live, we learn, we grow, and we look back on our former selves with love and compassion because we are figuring things out. With this eye look, I am working in the matte shades and going a little bit deeper each time because I want to create a smoky gradient, because I want to lift and elongate and round my eyes, and I want to use slightly warmer shades so I can create a contrast between warmer shades and cooler shades. The not feeling fulfilled in the world of exercise led me to want more. I wanted more. I was tired of doing what everyone told me was right. So at this point, I was teaching exercise classes the end of 2009 through 2010 is when I started teetering off. I just really was burnt out. I was teaching about 12 classes a week. I had my Monday through Friday classes at the YMCA closest to me, and then there was 2 other YMCAs in the areas. I taught 2 classes a night, and then I taught 2 classes at my primary YMCA 2 evenings, and then yeah, so so that's basically 10 classes throughout the basic week, and then I had a few weekend classes scattered through here. And then to make a little bit extra money, I also worked the front desk. And at that point, I might have still been working at my high school job, and my high school job was at Abercrombie & Fitch. And I basically worked there for a discount on clothing because I could not afford Abercrombie back in the day with my Abercrombie earnings. So I had a secondary job and then used my Abercrombie earnings to buy clothes with the Abercrombie discount. When I started to burn out there, I tried a few things. I tried working in a restaurant, and I was not cut out to work in a restaurant. It was so hard memorizing menus, dealing with tough customers. Like, I mean, any type of customer service work that you do, there's always going to be a tough customer. But that was really, really challenging, and I was burned out from that very quickly. I'm gonna now use this darker shimmer shade and take it right over my eyelid. One night when I came home from my serving job, I remember I got yelled at, and I was just not having it. I had never been spoken to in such a mean way, and what the person was upset about was something the kitchen did wrong with their order, not something I did. Everything on my end was correct because we had to go over the receipts and what I put in, what printed out, and then it turned out to be a kitchen issue, but there was still no apology. I was still taught too poorly. And I just remember I came home that night, and I remember at that point, Walmart was still 24/7 in the area I lived in, and I stopped by Walmart. I bought a 6-pack of Diet Coke because Diet Coke has always been my like decompressing, I need to unwind and recharge drink. So I remember I sat on the couch, I had my like little cheap laptop, and I just remember looking at job postings, and there was a job posting for an Estee Lauder counter at Belk, which Belk was like a little, or it still is, a department store in the southern half of the eastern US. And I applied. I was very open and honest that I had zero experience applying makeup on people other than to myself and then some friends. And I said that applying eyeliner on people scared me. And then I remember the recruiter had a giggle, and then she said, "That's no worry, they can trade me on everything else." So I started it in February 2010. So I had just turned 20 and I got my first job in cosmetics. So my first cosmetics job was an Estee Lauder counter, and that was such a fun experience. It was a very interesting experience. I have never been a pushy salesperson. There's nothing worse than spending a lot of money on a product that just isn't product for you. And then if you were working in something like commission sales, which a lot of cosmetic sales were in department stores, then you end up losing money because then you're losing that commission on return. So my philosophy is just to ask questions. If someone buys something, they buy something, offer samples, and just do your best. That approach built a very loyal client base that I had for most of my career. I went from Estee Lauder, then I worked for MAC, then I went back to Estee Lauder, and then I did some freelance work for MAC. Then I did a very short stint at Ulta, and then I went back to school for cosmetology. And then, oh, and to mention, when I was at Estee Lauder, I put myself through makeup school. Because I was really, really bad at makeup. So I put myself through makeup school with my Estee Lauder salary, and then that allowed me to get hired onto MAC. And then I went back to Estee Lauder because Estee Lauder at Macy's now offered more hours, a higher commission rate, and a higher starting pay. So I'm just going to sharpen up here. We will clean that up in just a moment. After Ulta, I decided to take out some student loans, and I went back to school for cosmetology, and I got my cosmetology license. And then I very quickly learned I do not enjoy doing hair. I do enjoy coloring hair, but cutting hair was a whole nother ball game, and it was not my favorite thing, to be honest. When I was finishing up cosmetology school, I remember I was working in the little clinic is what we called it, but that's where we were taking like our live customers. There was rumor there was a Sephora opening in our local JCPenney, and the receptionist for the salon had just been on the phone with like the Sephora recruiter, and she said I was the first person she thought of, and she connected me with the recruiter, and that was a very speedy process. I remember I interviewed with her. A day or two later, I interviewed with the store manager, and then a few days after that, they called me asking if I would be able to attend the new hire orientation. So that is how I ended up working at Sephora, and that was perfect because when I was starting off at Sephora, I was still able to work in the salon, kind of get my feet wet in a salon working environment, which did not enjoy at all. Really, really didn't enjoy it. And I was always apprehensive to take clients. So I ended up spending most of my time being the person who cleaned brushes, cleaned tools, washed and folded towels. And then one of the managers that first started at the Sephora I was working at, she ended up leaving, and then I was promoted to management. So then I worked in management from end of 2014 to mid 2016. And at mid 2016 is when I got married to the guy that wasn't right for me and started my process of moving to Canada. And then December of 2016, I moved to Canada, and here we are. I can't believe that next year will be 10 years of me living in Canada. And then my transition to moving in Canada was so scary because outside of the people I met through my ex-husband, I didn't know anyone, and I'm not the most outgoing person. Especially when I used to drink a little bit, I would be more outgoing because I had my core group of girlfriends, and to this day, today, my girlfriends I made when I started in cosmetics, they are still my best friend group. We are close, we talk, and we've all been able to grow together and experience life in different ways. It's just been a really beautiful experience, and we've gone to each other's weddings. We've just been able to grow up together, and it's been such a beautiful process. And they're still, when I need to process and work through something, they're still the group I talk to. Now I'm gonna use a little bit of color corrector. I just applied the Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin Tint. I have got about 10 more minutes and then I need to get off here and leave. Tonight I am going out to dinner with one of my very close friends here. And it's funny because I met my core group of friends in Toronto when I started working in the beauty department at Nordstrom. So I started working at Nordstrom at the perfect time because at that point, beginning of 2018, my husband and I had separated and I was looking for a job because I hit my breaking point. I couldn't do it. I finally had the realization we are not right for each other, and it was creating a very toxic environment for both of us because at that point I still was so emotionally immature and I did not know what the concept of think before you speak meant. I was a very damaged person, and there was a lot of pent up feeling and emotion from growing up and just everything. We all have baggage. We all have to grow up and learn to process. When I was in the process of getting hired at Nordstrom, one of my friends I had made here in Toronto was just like, hey, you have been single for nearly 6 months. You should get out there and date. Like, you've not really had an extensive dating history. So see what the city's like. And at that point, I was so insistent I would be single forever. I couldn't go through doing the whole relationship thing just because the previous situation just was not a pretty situation at all. Then one night we were just hanging out, talking on the phone, and my friend was like, hey, you create like a Tinder profile or something, or I'll create one for you. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's either you do it or I'll do it, I'll do it. So then I remember I created a Tinder profile that went nowhere for like a week because people are just really vulgar. I'm not a prude by any means, but I don't like my initial point of contact with a person to be just so vulgar and explicit. That's not me. I ended up connecting with a guy. There has to be that initial visual attraction because you're swiping on people. There has to be something that makes you swipe on whatever the good side, like you want to talk them side. And I can't even remember if it's left or right anymore. It's been so long. But anyway, my draw was I thought the person was attractive and I thought they were attractive. They used full sentences, proper punctuation, great, really beautiful diversity in the vernacular that they were choosing. And I really appreciate that. I found it very inspiring. So we ended up meeting. This is my very first Tinder date and it went so well. We went out to eat. We walked around Toronto. It was my first time really getting to explore some of the more nuanced, artsy, beautiful parts of Toronto that I hadn't experienced in the previous almost 2 years of living here. That date ended up being like, hey, do you want to go on a date tomorrow? And then tomorrow ended up being the next day. So it turned into every single day after work, it was like a new date. It evolved and basically, I mean, needless to say, every day has turned into a date since then because 2 years after that, I went on to marrying that first Tinder date. And now my husband and I have been together for, oh my goodness, we started dating in spring 2018. We got married in the autumn of 2020. And here we are in 2025. And it's just crazy that it took all that other crazy stuff to get to where we're at here. But hey, you live and you learn, and it's part of the beautiful journey of life. Something that we all go through at our different points. I'm going to use a little bit of my Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin Foundation in shade 7, just to add a little bit of coverage where I want to add a little bit more coverage. And then we're going to move on to embellishing the face. So when I was working at Nordstrom, that took me to working as what was called Beauty on Call. So I kind of got to work with the entire department, learn all the different brands. And I did that for almost a month. And then my department manager called me back to the office, and that was so triggering because that was very reminiscent of being sent to the principal's office when I was a child and just getting in trouble for everything. And I was just in that state of panic, like, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Am I getting fired today? And then she sat me down and then she asked if she remembered from my interview correctly that I used to manage at Sephora. And I said yes. And then she said, great. And you worked worked for MAC in the past? I said, correct. And then she let me know that there was an assistant manager position opening at the MAC counter, and she asked if I would be interested. And I said yes. And then the following morning, I had to be at the mall early. I did my artist interview with the MAC freestanding store. And then that same day, I got the word that from MAC and Nordstrom, I was the new counter manager. So in less than a month of being at Nordstrom, I was promoted to an assistant counter manager. And that's the position I held until I decided to go back to school for aesthetics here in Canada. And I transferred over to the MAC freestanding store that I did my artist interview at. I found the on-call schedule just to be a little bit too much with like my school study schedule and also trying to maintain a social life. So then at that point, we were engaged, and he told me that if I wanted to just focus on going to school, make good grades, then I could leave my like little part-time job. So that's what happened. I graduated my aesthetics program with a 4.0. Then we entered 2020, which was a big year for all of us. Then in 2021, I decided that I wanted to finally dabble in social media because I wanted to do social media for years. And then fun fact, when my ex and I had like a little breakup, I recorded and published a string of little makeup tutorials, and who knows, they might still be on YouTube somewhere, but there was like one, watched it right before I published this YouTube channel, and I just remember crying when I was watching it because my eyes were so red and puffy. I remember that's when he broke up with me for coming out to him that I wanted to transition, and I was inspired by a Lisa Eldridge video. Like, there was a video that she had on her channel called Makeup for Breakup, and I wanted to do my own makeup for breakup because I was just broken up with and I was devastated. And I remember I recorded that video on like a little flip camera, published it to YouTube, no editing, and then I went out that night with my girlfriends and I had one of the best nights with my friends, and I forgot. And then a few days later he messaged me, we got back together. That was a cycle that young me just needed to go through and experience. Unfortunate, but that was just part of what life was for me. And all that brought me here in 2021 to YouTube, where I finally got the courage to publish YouTube videos. And I wanted to take that kind of best friend, girlfriend experience that I'd always loved in the content I watched and creating with different people I worked with in retail environments or even in my freelance. Because even when I worked in retail, I always did bridal. I did a little bit of TV work for like local news stations and local film studios. I always did a lot of different work, and I always loved that connection aspect with different people. I decided that's what I wanted to bring to YouTube, and it's been a lot of trial and error figuring out what feels right. And here we are 4 years later, and I am excited to start sharing new content. I pinged the idea off you all a few weeks ago, and that was met with such positive response that I'm really eager to publish these new types of content and just share more of my life with all of you, because it's been so wonderful getting to meet you all and connect with you all, because I have not had the opportunity to meet anyone in person, but I have chatted with so many of you over the last few years, and there's so much I've been privileged to learn about your personal lives, your taste in fragrances, a little bit about your family, vacation. When I visited London last year, there was a few of you that messaged me and shared with me some of your favorite places to visit. It's been such a beautiful connective experience that I never knew I would be able to have. I never realized there would be this many people just interested in connecting, and now getting to do this and something I'm able to just further grow the community. If that's all this was just a way to grow community, connect with people, share things to help people, and just have like a little place where we can all come together and create beautiful makeup looks that make us feel our best. That is such a treat and a true privilege. I am getting some transfer under my eyes. I will clean that up in just a moment. I've been wearing a lot more false lashes. I've been wearing Ardell Naked 420 lashes a lot, but since I'm running close on time, it's quicker for me just to slap on some mascara, and then this happens. No worries, we can clean that up. And tonight, the friend I'm going out with is one of those really close girlfriends I made when I was working at Nordstrom. This is the Maybelline Vinyl Ink ink lipstick in number 155 Upbeat. I really love doing 2 layers of this. I like to use a little spoolie just to flake off any bits of mascara. One size on Till Dawn setting spray. I'm gonna pop on some hair and then I will be right back to finish off the lip look and add some fragrance. Hair for tonight is Beltress Milano in the shade Raw Sugar Blonde, and I went through earlier and I gave it this nice textured beachy wave using mostly a 1-inch iron, and then I went through and pulled a few pieces out and used a 1.5-inch iron to add just a little bit more volume and texture. And now I'm using my Maybelline Lifter Gloss in the shade 021 Gummy Bear. And then my scent for the evening is going to be Love Shack Fancy Love on the Beach. A little bit more of a lighter fragrance, so this is one that you do need to overspray a little bit. That is to conclude today's video. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about me, getting to know what inspired me and brought me to creating a YouTube channel. And I just thank you again for sticking with me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to create, share content with all of you. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, take care. Bye, y'all.